bringest zu mein Glück Frieden auf deine Flügel bläue und nimm mein Herz mit und bring es zu mein Glück. Es ist hallo der Frühling auf früh und gekommen, zerbläht hat sich Bänkschaft noch dir. Ich seh dich wie jetzt der Ballon mit Blumen.
ערב טוב וברוכים הבאים. אני רוצה קודם כל לברך את קריסטינה תומושייטה, שהיא הסגנית של שגריר ליטא בישראל, שהוא לא יכול היה להגיע היום, יש פה משלחת מהסיימאס שהוא מלווה. אז היא באה במקומו, אז good evening. דוקטור כריסטוף דיקמן, ידידנו הוותיק, שהעברית שלו הפתיע אותי היום, לא ידעתי שאתה כזה מומחה. ואורחים, כל האורחים. כן, אני כבר עכשיו נזהרת. לא למכור אותו. אז ככה, כמו שכולכם יודעים, כל הפגישות פה בבית וילנה להנצחה ולמורשת ליטווקים, הן תמיד באות מתוך איזו תחושה של כולנו פה, של אחריות משותפת, לזכור, לחקור, ולהבין את מה שאירע לקהילות היהודיות במזרח אירופה. וזה בעצם מטרת העל שלנו כבני דורות ההמשך של שורדי השואה. אבל היום, מצד אחד התכנסנו כאן הערב על מנת לחקור ולהעמיק את הידע שלנו על תולדות קהילות יהודי ליטא ואוקראינה בשואה. זה בניגוד לפעמים הקודמות. ומאידך גיסא, מתוך סקרנות ורצון להבין את המורכבות האנושית שעומדת בבסיס האירועים, שעליהם ירחיב מיד ידידנו דוקטור דיקמן. הערב נקדיש את המפגש לשיחה על מחקר השוואתי חשוב, שעוסק בשורת יהודי ליטא ואוקראינה. זה שתי זירות שבהן התנהלו תהליכים דומים, אבל ייחודיים. עבורנו יש לאירוע הזה גם מימד אישי, כמובן, כי הוא מתקיים ביוזמתו ובהצעתו של דוקטור כריסטוף דיקמן, שמאות רבות של שעות מחקר, רעיונות ושנים של עיסוק מעמיק בהיסטוריה של מזרח אירופה, הופכות אותו לאחד החוקרים המשמעותיים ביותר בתחום. עצם בקשתו לקיים את הערב הזה כאן, בבית וילנה, בתל אביב, ובהקשר של קהילות שמשפחות רבות מאיתנו קשורות אליהן, היא מחווה של שותפות עמוקה בחקר ובזיכרון. דוקטור דיקמן שוהה כרגע בארץ, בימים אלה במסגרת מחקר שהוא מבצע ביד ושם, ואנו מודים לו מקרב לב על הנכונות לחלוק איתנו את תובנותיו, המבט ההיסטורי הרחב שלו, והרגישות שהוא מביא לחקר תקופה קשה כל כך. ותודה רבה לכם שהגעתם. נאחל לנו ערב של הקשבה, למידה, הבנה היסטורית, מוסרית ומשמעותית.
גבירותיי ורבותיי, המתחיל קצת בעברית, איך שמיקי אמרה, אני פה עכשיו בירושלים כבר חודשיים, יש לי פלושיפ שם, ופלושיפ שם משהו ממש טוב. אז יש לי זמן לבקר אנשים, לקרוא, לחקור, כן? והייתי פה בבית וילנה בינואר 23, נכון? וזה היה משהו במיוחד. נתתי את ההרצאה שלי, רוב מהם הייתם פה, נכון? אני חושב. כן? נתתי את ההרצאה, ושעה וחצי משהו התווכחנו, ואחרי זה עוד פעם שעתיים כמעט. ישבנו יחד, ודיברנו על מה שהיה, ולמה ואיך, והתווכחנו זה וזה וזה, אני היסטוריון, אני אמרתי לא, זה לא ככה, זה ככה, ואתם אמרתם זה לא ככה וככה, אני ממש נהניתי מזה. ועכשיו חשבתי, אוקיי, יש לי זמן, אז למה לא? בלי כסף, just for כיף, רק להמשיך עם הוויכוחים, עם המחשבות, עם ה... בדיוק, ואני גם כן, ואני חשוב לי הארגומנטים, arguments, evidence, זה מה שאנחנו צריכים, כן, בדיוק. אז כתבתי וואטסאפ למיקי ואיפה יערית? יערית לזר. מוסרת דרישת שלום. מה זה מוסרת דרישת שלום? איפה היא? בבית, למה בבית? כן? אז תמסרו לה דרישת שלום, כן? וחבל שהיא לא פה, למה לא?
נכון, היא גם כן מצטערת.
כן. עכשיו אני מאוד שמח להיות פה. אז בחודשיים האחרונים אני קראתי על שני פרויקטים, ואני רוצה קצר להציג את הפרויקטים. אז הראשון על אוקראינה. זה? על אוקראינה. וזה משהו מרגש בשבילי, בגלל המלחמה, זהו, בגלל המלחמה יש Ukrainian History Global Initiative, כן? וזה רעיון של טימותי סניידר וההיסטוריונים אוקראינים הכי טובים. והם אמרו, אנחנו צריכים לחשוב עוד פעם על ההיסטוריה של אוקראינה בנפרד של רוסיה. כן? עד עכשיו, ל100 שנה, אנחנו חקרנו את ההיסטוריה של אוקראינה כאילו זה הבן הקטן של רוסיה הגדול. וזה לא טוב. אז צריכים לחשוב על זה עוד פעם. אז הם מצאו כסף, ואמרו, אוקיי, אנחנו מסתכלים על השואה, על ההיסטוריה הזאת, מההתחלה, מאדם מאיפה, עד היום, עוד פעם. ולשואה באוקראינה עם 4 אנשים, 2 גרמנים, דיטה, פול ואני, ו2 אוקראינים, רומן שליאכטיק ויורי רצ'נקו. אז אנחנו 4. והטאסק, איך אומרים הטאסק? התפקיד שלנו לכתוב רק 100 עמודים על השואה באוקראינה in an accessible way, so that somebody can read it who doesn't have a clue, to explain to the public מה קרה. אז זה המשימה שלנו, זה בדיוק, זה המשימה שלנו. אז אנחנו צריכים להיות ברמת האקדמית הכי גבוה, ב-writing, בכתיבה שלנו הכי accessible, כן? וזה, אני לא יודע אם אנחנו מצליחים, אבל זה. אז, ואני חבר טוב עם טים סניידר, כשהוא שאל אותי, כריסטוף, בבקשה, join us, אמרתי לו, למה? אוקראינה לא מבין בזה. הוא אמר, לא חשוב, תלמד, you learn. You learn and then you explain to us. אז אמרתי, בסדר, אני מנסה. ובשבילי זה נורא טוב, בגלל שזה מאוד דומה לליטא, מאוד דומה בעצם, אבל גם מאוד שונה. אז טוב, אז זה מה שאני... And the purpose is, זה ה-website, UHJIOLG, זה מאוד מעניין. Ukrainian History Global Initiative is a major new project in the humanities, social sciences and sciences, הכל, with the goal of establishing a scholarly and accessible presentation of the deep history of the lands of contemporary Ukraine and the peoples who have inhabited them. Contemporary Ukraine, בגבולות של היום, borders from today. It aims to generate a new model of synthetic public history. זאת אומרת, לא רק הקטע שלנו על השואה, אבל כל הקטעים, שיש כמעט 100 קטעים בזה, מההתחלה עד היום, צריך להיות מאוד מעניין, I believe. טוב, אורי? עוד? אז זו 4 אנשים בקטע שלנו, זה רומן, יורי באמצע, דיטה מצד שמאל, הוא ממש, הוא הגרמני, הוא יודע על אוקראין, כן? ומצד זה, אני גרמני עוד לא יודע הרבה על אוקראינה, אבל אני לומד. זה לוקח לי לקייב גם כן, וזה גם נורא מעניין. כמו שאני בא לפה, זה נורא מעניין, לנסוע לקייב זה גם נורא מעניין. ולדבר שם את האנשים בתנאים המלחמה, כן? ולעשות את העבודה שלנו שם. כן? אז בספטמבר הייתי בקייב, וחשבתי שזה נורא מעניין, בגלל שהאוקראינים הם היום ממש זה הפרו-אירופאי שיש. The most pro-European people I can imagine. More than the old Europe, so to speak, they know what they are fighting for. They know what they are fighting for. And you can feel that it's a very energized, mobilized society, and they will not lose. They will not lose. אני בטוח. מכל מה שרואים שם. They will not lose. Very creative. So אני נהנה מזה ממש. Yeah? So, now the second project, and that is much closer to בית וילנה, זה משהו שבא ממשפחת גנץ. ממשפחת גנץ. גנץ, יעקב גנץ. Her grandson of his wife, from Ada, her grandson is Alexander. Alexander wants to two things. First, they are looking in Vilna for the remains of Jacob. זה החצר, איפה הגסטאפו. Yes, we have been there together now, exactly. Okay. We met just a couple of weeks ago. We were together in Vilna, and they tried to find the remains of Jacob Gens, because, as you all know, except Yuval maybe, חבר שלי שם גם כן פה, he was shot in September 43, a week before the final liquidation of the ghetto, but not in the main prison, but in the small Gestapo prison at the end of the Rasu Street, where the last selection had taken place of the remaining ghetto population. But in that region, they tried to find, and they found bones. And the first one they checked wasn't him, Polim, Polanim. Yeah? But they continue to screen the remains they have found. So let's see if they find. And then, because why? To bury properly. It's a Jewish funeral. Yeah, and it's very important for them. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, Alexander and the family, they are so much interested in the image, in the picture of Jacob Gens in the public and in historiography. ככה הוא נראה. מה זה? What do people think about? Do they judge him? Do they understand what he was doing? So, during that research, they came across John Bernstein. John Bernstein חי בדנמרק, he lives in Denmark, and he's the son of Leon Bernstein. Anybody here heard the name of Leon Bernstein? He was a revisionist, and was, for a time, he was a successor of Grigory Jashunsky in the cultural department of the Jewish Council. So Gens gave him the cultural department to enforce learning of Ivrit, of Hebrew, instead of Yiddish. Yeah? So for a few months he was in the Jewish Council and then was pushed out again, and then went to the partisans with a second fighting group, with Sheinbaum people. Yeah, with the Sheinbaum people. So, and John gave Alexander, and he then passed it on to me, a memoir that he has written in the 70s, when he was in the States already. He left, so he survived, he left Israel in 67 and went to Chicago to teach as a mathematics professor. Yeah? So, and he wrote his memoirs because Antek Zuckerman, now you all know him from the Warsaw Ghetto, urged him, Leon, you have to write. You have to write. Do you understand when I speak a little bit of him? Okay, you have to write. And then he did, and he wrote almost 1,000 pages. במכונה כתיבה, it's almost 1,000 pages, so we published it, and it's going to be like 600-700 pages. And he wrote it in German. Why in German? Because his family was raising him near Klaipeda, near Memel. So the text is written in the old Memeldeutsch, which is a wonderful old language, which is, oh wow, this is, So we're going to publish it as a document in German, and it's going to be translated into English. It's 10 chapters, now we have 4 translated, and my task is, my task is now to write the introduction and to comment those 1,000 pages. Because the form he has chosen to write it is ein historischer Roman, a historical novel. Yeah? So it's 10 chapters, and when you read it, it's like a movie. You have all the scenes from the beginning of ghettoization till the end of the German occupation. It's like screenshots all the time. And when I read it, it's very close to what we know, or what we can know about what happened. So it's not memoirs, but it's like a play. No? But everything he has in there is either invented on purpose, or they changed the names a bit, or it's a story he wants to tell. And with the form of a roman, of a novel, allows him to deviate a little bit from sort of the brute facts of history. So now, then what do? I tell him, okay, I try to separate the two, or at least to comment so the reader can understand. Yeah? Meaning, instead of learning about Ukraine now in Yad Vashem, what did I do? I went through the footnotes of the edition, which is in progress, of the Kruk diary. Of dem also qua שתים-עשרה שנה או משהו ביד ושם, בעברית, וזה הכי מושלם edition there is. It's the best version of the Kruk diary there is. And they have 1,500 footnotes. With all the people mentioned there and explaining everything. So I thought, okay, אני חייב לעבוד על ברנסטיין, אז אני מנצל את הידע הזה במנוסקריפט הזה על קרוק, ומשתמש בזה לברנסטיין. וגם לפני חצי שנה אני חושב שאתם הייתם פה, היו פה דניאלה אוזצקי ומירי יהלום, ו-especially מירי יהלום, incredible. What she knows on the revisionism, לא האמנתי. זה פה בז'בוטינסקי אינסטיטוט. Wow. So now we are cooperating on this because she has all this incredible material in her archive and all the Yiddish and Ivrit testimonies, especially interviews, collective interviews, and all kinds of stuff. Yeah. So I try to learn about that, and which is, I hope, very, very useful for the Bernstein memoir. Yeah. So this forces me deep into the וילנה ghetto. הייתי בספרייה פה, וראיתי, הספר שלי לא פה. אתם לא יכולים לקרוא את הספר שלי, נכון? את השני... אי אפשר. מה זה shame on me? Shame on you. No? Because בספר הזה, it's a comprehensive book on the occupation בשואה בליטא, and of course I can only scratch the surface actually. I try to go deep, but it can only scratch the surface. And now I have to go a whole level deeper. Yeah? So if you hear anything, know anything about Bernstein and his friends, the Scheinbaum group, please let me know, inform me. And I need evidence always. I always need evidence for this. Yeah?
Did you interview his wife, Gen's wife and daughter that were in Israel on a visit?
I met them. Ada was not here. She stayed home. She's 99. Yeah, she's 99. But she gave several interviews, like one of 6 hours long. Yeah. So all the material that Ada has produced, which is the daughter of Jakob Gens, yeah, she is Alexander, the grandson, has given to me. He's end of 20 something, and met him in Vilnius, and we're talking on Zoom all the time, writing, and he's also the one financing all this because it's a lot of time and energy and work to go into this. So he's very much behind it. Hmm? Yeah. Wait a little bit. It's so much in progress right now. I would wait a little bit till. Yeah, I'm sure he would love to come. You know, he loved it in Vilnius to see to actually see all the places where all this happened. Yeah, so he would love to be. I'm sure, and he's cool. I think he's. And I told him, Alexander, I'm not one who writes or says what you want to hear. Yeah, I'm not one of those. אני אומר מה שאני חושב, ולא משהו אחר. אז הוא אומר, כן, זה בדיוק מה שאני רוצה. Because there are so many fairy tales around. Also in the interviews with Ada, there are fairy tales. It's clear, the moment she talks about it, say, no, אי אפשר. תמיד פשוט אי אפשר שזה קרה. אז נבדוק מה היא רוצה להגיד לנו. כן? So there's a lot of material, and the daughter of Ada, actually, she was with Alexander in Vilnius. So we sat down together, but she wasn't used to my takes. Alexander is used already, so she tried to convince me that I was wrong all the time. אני תמיד שומע, I listen always, but you have to have good reasons to change my mind. Yeah. So those are the two projects I've been busy with over the last 2 months, and also before already. And that's when we thought about coming here. What do I tell you? Okay, I have learned a little about Ukraine, basics, but by far not enough. And I thought, because for me it's so interesting from the Lithuanian background to look at what happened there, to see, okay, this is very, very similar, and this is so different. Yeah. So. And because the atmosphere is rather one of family and friends than of this straight, finster academics, I thought, okay, I'm going to tell you my thoughts and impressions, and we take it from there. Yeah. So this is not finished academic work. Yeah. But it's like a work in progress, and I want to share, and then we talk about it. So that's the idea. This is the first page of the Bernstein historischer Roman. Das letzte Begräbnis, the last funeral, and this refers to Schönbaum, whose funeral in the ghetto was the last proper Jewish funeral, yeah, in beginning of September 1943. And that's the Widerstand gegen die Nazis. So the resistance against the Nazis is working like it's wühlt, like it's kind of sabotaging, it's kind of word in Villena. Yeah? So that's the first page of this long document. The text of Krug I was working on now for the last week, and this is going to be something. Yeah, I'm really excited about this. So Hermann Krug, Yuman Ghetto Vilna, Ktavim Acherim, everything and they still find stuff. They're trying to add, translated from, and Chavi Dreyfus, she is in charge. בדיוק. זה מה שאמרתי. I spent 2 weeks working on those footnotes. Take out all the mistakes they made with a smile, yeah, and then learning from it. Yeah. So and I'm good friends with Javi. So we try to get it done now, and also the others who are helping. Miri has helped them a lot. Miri Yahalom. Yeah, and in Yad Vashem it's Jonathan Barzilai, that's his name. He's also crazily good, yeah, with all the details you need for this edition. Yeah, so this is, this is always very slow, no, but it will appear. Yeah. So, and to remind you of my own work. On the left, those are the 2 volumes which are not in the Bible in the library here. The left one is with pictures from the perpetrators, Germans and Lithuanians, and the second one is actually on almost exclusively à la Shoah, with those children from the Kovno ghetto. Yeah, and then because it's a big, heavy academic text. Ruta van der Geite, heard me lecture and said, Karistof, we have to get this in an accessible form. And then we made interviews together, yeah, in English, and we published it in Lithuanian, Cape de Evicta, and Sergei has that volume here in Litait, and then after that in English. How did it happen? Yeah, how did it happen was my title. That's what I want to explain. Understanding the Holocaust is not my thing. Yeah, we try to understand, of course, but that is from the editing house. No, because I think this is too much bragging, actually. Yeah, it's too. I'll explain you. No, the Holocaust is the local. No, so exactly. So, but this is also. She asked me for 2 years. We met each other, and we had 40 sessions. Yeah, and she asked me all those questions a normal Lithuanian would ask. And I tried to explain in simple words, what do I think? What have I learned and what do I don't know? Or what do we don't know? Yeah? So it's supposed to be a very accessible form of reading. It's still heavy, yeah, it's still because the topic is so, it's not an easy one. But it's, I would recommend, if you want to have an easy one, before you read the thick one, to look at that. The German version, we have good news now. The translation has been going on for 6 years already and then got stuck, but now we can go again. No, so eventually, another 10 years or so, and we have it then in English. No, and then you can check if what nonsense I've written and published. Yeah. So now today, what are we looking at when we compare Lithuania and Ukraine? Lithuania is tiny, a small country. Ukraine in the borders of today, it's huge. It's huge, yeah? So in Lithuania, we have, now I repeat a little bit, as we all know, about 200,000 Jewish victims. 8,000 were able to flee in the summer of 41. In Ukraine, we have 1.5 million victims. 1/4 of the Shoah. That includes eastern, what was before till 39, eastern Poland, and then taken over and annexed to Ukraine in 1940. Before you had 2.3 million Jews in Ukraine. 800,000 could get away. 1.5 million were under German, and 1.6 million were under German occupation. 1.5 million were killed. Yeah, so that's the dimension. It's like. It's huge. In both regions, 95% and more Jews were murdered. In both. Doesn't make a difference. Second largest victim group in both societies. In Lithuania, about almost 170,000. In Ukraine, 1 million. 1 million Soviet prisoners of war didn't survive. They were killed, either by hunger, starvation, or were shot. Yeah? So those are the dimensions we're looking at here. And as we all know, the Shoah in these regions didn't take place in those annihilation camps. It took place local, in the local. So in Lithuania, we have about 240 massacre sites. 240, be'erech. In Ukraine, it's almost 1,000 of these massacre sites. Yeah? So in the whole of the occupied Soviet Union, in the borders of 41, it's almost 2,500 massacre sites. Now, Arkady Seltzer is the best from Yad Vashem, is the best and has counted them actually. Yeah, so that's a huge dimension. No? So Lithuania is tiny; it's 240 only, no? Like 10% of all. So that's already a huge difference. No? Now, administration in these two regions was very difficult. Ukraine in the borders of today, because in Ukraine we have 5 regions, 5. We have of German occupation. You have in the east, you have the military government, you have the military occupied zone. It never was turned over to the civil administration, to the Reichskommissariat Ukraine. Yeah, there's 1, 2, and this includes 5 generalkommissariate, 5. Yeah, Volhynia Podolia, Zhytomyr, Kiev, Mykolaiv, Dnipropetrovsk, Crimea. Yeah, So, and one of those would be Lithuania. So Volhynia Podolia has the same size approximately as Lithuania. So it's only 1/5 of only this strip under German civil administration, meaning here are the politicians. And it's not just the military. Now we have the Romanians here, and close to Romania. They were occupying Transnistria, the zone. We have the Hungarians, Carpatho Ukraine, here. That was Czech, and then the Ukrainians occupied it, so we have it here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and where's the 5th one? Romania, Hungary. I'm missing one, I don't know why. Why do I have to look into my notes? No, Belarus outside. Reichskommissariat Ukraine, military administration, Carpatho Ukraine, Romanian Ukraine, and I don't know. So let's have it 4, I don't know. Maybe Crimea was counted extra. Yeah. So the point here is that it's a huge variety in local structures, because it does make a huge difference whether it's military, political, Romanian, Hungarian, everything. It makes a huge difference. Even though in all of these countries, except for a part of Eastern Galicia, we have this common feature of what I said already, of the whole occupied union, that sort of mass death was local. Yeah? Whenever it happened, being in 41 and 42, all the people around it continued to live with it. Yeah? So it happened where they lived, very close. As in Lithuania, we all know it from Lithuania, how close everything is. Yeah? Just outside the village that the massacre sites are. Yeah? Ponar, you are in 10 minutes there from Vilnius, right? So it's very, very close. In difference to what's happened in Central and Western Europe, or a part in Southeastern Europe, where people were deported over days and days and days, and murdered in places far away. So this is a categorical difference from Central and West to East. Yeah. Now, in Lithuania, as we know, we have only one administration. It's one Generalkommissariat, first military administration, then turned over to the politicians, and then the mass crimes really began in a huge, big scale, and stayed more or less like that till the end. Yeah, so it's from the structure is still complicated in a way when you want to explain it with the involvement of the Lithuanians. It's still difficult. You might remember a little bit from last time, but it's compared to Ukraine, it's kindergarten. It's easy. Yeah, this one is really complicated. Yeah, that's taken from a book, the map of Lithuania, and the only decision here is you have two big cities, Kaunas and Vilnius, and you have 4 provincial Generalkommissariate, Gebietskommissariate, not Gebietskommissariate. You know, in the north, Panevėžys and Šiauliai, in the south, Kaunas and Vilnius, and the 2 cities. That's it. So that's the German administration in principle you have to deal with when you want to explain which decisions were taken when. Yeah? So much easier than Ukraine. Now, Jews in both regions. What's the difference between the Jews in Lithuania, Litvakim, Midnagdim, and the Hasidim by Ukraine, in Galicia? Yeah? And here you have it. The Hasidim, many people think, oh, the Lithuanian shtetl is full of rabbis and Hasidim. No, it's there, but it's in Eastern Galicia and in Volhynia Podolia, meaning in the west of occupied Ukraine, yeah, and not in Lithuania. So we have a huge difference in the thinking, in the worldview, in the values of the Jews there and the Jews there. And then for Ukraine, it's even more complicated because you have the West, the traditional pre-39 Eastern Polish areas, and you have the Sovietized East, yeah, who lived for 20, 30 years under the Soviets and developed in a different way, in much lower numbers in the East than in the West. Yeah? So here you have actually within Ukraine, you have already 2 huge communities which are kind of secularized in a way, modernized. Yeah? Just ethnic Jews, so to speak, as 1932 in the Soviet passport, you have the category as ethnic Jew, and you have the West, you know, the much more traditional Jews, much more religious, shtetl really living, Hungarian-occupied Carpato-Ukraine, that was the most backward, so to speak. They were Middle Ages, deep Middle Ages. Yeah? So it's a very, very colorful picture. Yeah? Very colorful. So very different. Now, non-Jews and non-Germans in both regions. Yeah? You have strong national movements in both regions. Yeah? And we all know about the Lithuanians, right? Because we always think about them, because some of them were part of the perpetrators. You have the LAF, the Lithuanian Activist Front. You have the LNP, the Lithuanian Nationalist Party. And last time I explained how they came into the deciding positions. And those young men, they were the key group of the perpetrators on the Lithuanian side. Not as having the initiative, but as the executive force of the German occupiers. Yeah? So you have the LAF, LNP, and then you have them turn against the Germans, or going in a wait-and-see position when they understood, okay, this is not going to go good for us. Yeah? So they always made their own decision. At first we go with the Germans against the common enemy, and then we refrain, and then we see, okay, how is this going to go? The Red Army is going to come back, 43, 44. What can we do to save our future, to prepare ourselves for the future after the war? You have the same in Ukraine. Ukraine was independent after World War I for a very short period. Yeah? And then was conquered by the Bolsheviks, was a fighting ground for a long time, conquered by the Bolsheviks, and you have a nationalist movement in the West, then in Eastern Poland also, like over the border as well. Now, that is the later OUN, Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, OUN. And of course with a split. All nationalist movements have this split between, here it's between Bandera and Melnik. Yeah? So you have here a complicated history, mostly in the west of Ukraine, and you have this complicated history of nationalists in Lithuania. Now, Ukraine is different because you have, in this war between 18 and 21, you have this enormous pogroms, the massive, the greatest pogroms against Jews before the Shoah. They happened here. My estimate is we have about 125,000 dead in this area, about 300,000 wounded. Now in Ukraine, parts of western Belarus and eastern Poland. But it's huge, never seen before. Much larger than anything that Khmelnytsky has done, all that, much larger. But then was crushed down by the Bolsheviks. The Bolshevik ended this. Even though in the pogroms, there's a small part of Bolsheviks units, Bujonni, yeah, who was taking part in that. But just a small. And the general policy, as we all know of the Soviet, was don't you dare. Anti-Semitism is something that splits the Soviet people. We don't want that. It was forbidden. It was forbidden. Yeah? So that's one of the reasons why many Jews then said, okay, we are safer under the Bolshevik sort of schirm, under the Bolshevik protection. Umbrella, yes, thank you. Bolshevik umbrella than in any other. Yeah? And that's the experience of this huge violence wave in 18 to 21. I believe, somebody just told me about having to leave, but maybe that was another day. And we don't have that violence in Lithuania. Lithuania was peaceful. Yeah? They have a little bit of violence, and we can always identify exactly which ultra-nationalist group could do that. Yeah? And there were tiny events, tiny. Basically, the history was peaceful. Yeah? There were tensions, there were conflicts, yeah? There were organized anti-Semitic movements before 41, yeah? But still, it was hardly violent, hardly. Yeah? So, and in stark difference to Ukraine. Now, just imagine the history of Ukraine. 1821, we have these huge pogroms and the war with, all in all, with hunger and everything, close to 7 million victims between 18 and 21. Yeah? And then you have 10 years later, you have the Holodomor. We have this huge hunger crisis caused by the center, by Stalin, against Ukrainian people and many Kazakh people as well, in order to raise capital, so to speak, from the land in order to feed the cities and to modernize the country, yeah, with at least 3 million dead, at least. Yeah, some say 7, some say 10. You know, I'm very conservative with the numbers always. Yeah, so that's all the more. And then a few years later, the Great Terror sets in the Soviet occupied areas, in the Soviet areas of eastern Ukraine. Yeah, when they take out tens of thousands of the functional elites, of soldiers, of national minorities, of Japanese, of Poles, of Germans also, yeah, as potential dangers for the Soviet buildup. Yeah, so it's a almost continuous history of violence, and it's absent in Lithuania. We don't have something like that in Lithuania. It's a stark difference. Yeah, so huge difference. Then, now the question is, of course, for our understanding today, we have different sizes, different administrations. We have different Jewish, sort of various Jewish people here. You have different nationalist organizations. You have different history of violence. Does it make a difference for what is happening after 41? How does this prehistory affect what's happening between 41 and 44? And the answer is that actually it makes no difference. זה לא משנה, זה לא חשוב למה שקרה. The result in, I mentioned it already, what's happening in all of the Soviet-occupied areas, in the German-occupied Soviet areas, is far over 95% of Jews didn't survive the German occupation. No matter whether it's Lithuanian, Latvian, Estonian, Ukrainian, Belarusians, Moldovan, Romanians, Hungarian, ein Heftel. And this is important for the discussion also on Lithuania. Yeah? Because very often Lithuanians are singled out. Oh, this happened so bad in Lithuania because they are so bad. Yeah? שטויות. ממש שטויות. If you compare, if you have a bigger picture, you can see that everywhere, independent of administrative, as I said, no matter what administration, no matter what the prehistory was, you have 2.6 million under German occupation and 2.5 million were killed. Yeah? And this tells us a lot about how this violence came to pass. It's because of us. The German occupier comes in and then uses everything that's there, but the result is everywhere the same. So if you start to look at this history from the perspective of people characteristics, Ukrainians are like this, or Mitnagdim are like this, or Hasidim are like this, or the Jews should have done this, or should have done that, yeah, or the non-Jewish, non-Germans should have done this or that. Complicated, very complicated. Yeah, if you want to base this on knowledge, on what actually happened, this is a picture we get. Yeah, this from Yitzhak Aratu, who unfortunately also left us. I mean, 2 years ago or something. And the numbers are cool, are more or less okay. Yeah, they're reliable. Yeah, and so it's so this is really what we see. Now, the most important question for me now is, why do we see the complete powerlessness on the Jewish side? 2.5 million. How is it possible that this could happen to them? How is it possible? Why were the Jews trapped? And the metaphor of trap is for me key here. The Jews were trapped in these regions. There was no way out. Absolutely no way out. So why is that? Why couldn't you run away? Or hide or get something? Find a way to survive. And we know now that there was no one survival strategy which could have worked. There wasn't one. So if an historian comes and knows better in hindsight, they should have done this, they should have done that, they should have done this. Hannah Arendt. Why didn't the Jewish Council, in the 60s, why didn't the Jewish councils tell the people, just run, create chaos. Survival rates will be higher. Yeah? But Hannah Arendt, she's wonderful, but she didn't really know what she was talking about. Because there were many ghettos which actually fled as a whole, especially in Belarus and somewhere in Ukraine too. But the result is the same. There were sometimes hundreds surviving here, hundreds surviving there for a bit more time, meaning every possible or thinkable survival strategy for the communities, not on an individual basis, for the communities, was tried out. Every. Complete collaboration with the enemy, complete resistance, and everything in between. All was tried when you look at it carefully. And nothing helped in the end. Nothing. So why is that? Yeah? And this is only when we look at the history in a certain way. So let me shortly repeat. I did it 2 years, but I would like to repeat it shortly. If I want to know why certain groups make certain decisions, I ask for their experiences. What have they gone through and what do they make of it? Experiences on the one side, meaning I want to know for the Germans, for the Lithuanians, for the Ukrainians, for the Jews, what have they gone through and what is their view of what is happening, which past is behind them, because that determines, in conjunction with the expectations. We expect this, we expect this, we expect this. This determines their choices and the range of choices people can make. Yeah. So if I want to know what the community of Beit Vilna does, why do they decide this or this? I need to know their history. I need to know their experiences. And experiences not in the sense of that is something given, but experience is something what you make of your past. What you make of how you interpret your own past. That is key. And that determines the range of choices you have. And that depends also on the expectations you have. Okay, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. In history, I do that for the Germans, for the Lithuanians, the Ukrainians, and the Jews. And then I get further with, why do the groups make the choices that they have taken? Why is that? So, and this must be combined with two further terms, that is power and choice. Choice I already mentioned, because that determines actually what's happening, the interaction of the choices of different groups. And that also depends on the power they have. And what is power? Yeah? And I think the best definition we have is a simple one, the old one from Max Weber, one of the founder of sociology. Power is the ability to influence what is happening, to force others, to force your will upon others. So you can really influence what is happening. We have the ability to influence what is happening to you and to others. Now, the situation between 41 and 44 for the Jews is one of complete powerlessness. You couldn't influence what was happening, no matter which choices you have taken. Nothing. You could do nothing. Different, the most powerful were, of course, the Germans. Yeah? They could influence what is happening. This way, that way, this way, that way. Yeah? Yes, the most powerful. And in between, we have the Lithuanians, the Ukrainians, the Poles, the whatever. The non-Jewish, non-Germans. And they, when you think of it in this concept of totalitarianism, you would say they were also powerless. Yeah? But when you look at the history, you could see, no. They could make a lot of choices Jews couldn't make. Yeah? A lot of choices Jews couldn't make because they could openly resist, for example. And for Lithuania, the best example is they say, no, we don't go to we don't create the SS division as the German wanted in spring 43. Now they collectively said, no, we don't do it. So the Germans wanted to punish, but they didn't have the personnel to punish because the Lithuanian policemen and soldiers were against them. Yeah? And they had only 150 German policemen to punish all the 30,000 Lithuanian men they wanted to draw into the Lithuanian division. Yeah? So nothing happened to so the only way out for the Germans was, okay, we take a group of intellectuals and of functional elites of the Lithuanian and put them to Stutthof, in the concentration camp, in Ehrenhaft, so in a special sort of honor prison, so to speak, in Stutthof. And those 46 people, 1/3 of them were main perpetrators in 41. Yeah? They were ultra-nationalists, they were very active, very young, very full of energy. Yeah? And they were then had turned against the Germans, say this is not good for us, and they were then punished by the Germans and put there. Yeah? And that's how complicated this history is. Yeah? So you have prisoners in Stutthof, which were in 41, for example, Čuberkis and Burakas. They were the Lithuanian liaisons between the Vilna ghetto and the German city administration. Same people. Yeah, Burakas, I'm sure you have read the name in one of the stories, in one of the memoirs. Now he was constantly the person, Mura Burakas Jewish Council. That was a chain of communication. Yeah, and then he was in Stutthof. Yeah. And why? Because the Lithuanians had a choice what to do, which could really influence the situation. So there was no SS division of Lithuanians, in difference to Latvia and Estonia, which had. Doesn't take away that there were 25 Lithuanian police battalions, Schutzmannschaftsbataillone, yes? But that's already a different story than real SS divisions. So, methods, experiences, expectations, power, and choice. Always have those. I have those terms in mind. If I want to understand what's happening and why. Why do people make the choices they make? Because that influences the thing. Now, next photo, please. Now, we all know what happened in Lithuania, right? That is how the Shoah progressed in Lithuania. The Germans come in, and the Germans had two mass murder plans. The first one is we Germans, we Nazis, in the context of this war, need to decapitate the Soviet Union. Decapitate. As we have decapitated, together with the Soviets, the Polish state. Yeah? To that point of time, they had killed 60,000 Poles. 7,000 Jews and 60,000 Poles in order to render the Polish people weak. So they would not put up resistance against the Germans. Now we planned a war against the Soviet Union. We're going to repeat that on a much larger scale because we need to win this war very quickly. And we do that by causing the Soviet state to collapse. It will implode by killing the bearers of the Soviet state. And that explains us, actually, in the Nazi mind, why at the beginning in Lithuania and also in the Ukraine, we have this huge killing of Jewish men, exclusively. Just Jewish men. In Lithuania, until the end of July, you have in those 4 Gebietskommissariate in the cities, you have 5,000 Jewish men murdered there and there and there and there. 4 Gebietskommissariate, 5,000 men in each. The context here is anti-Semitic interpretation of the Soviet bearers of the Soviet state. And if we take those people out, the system will collapse. And then it's easy for us to do with the land and the people and the resources what we want. They are not organized anymore. That was the idea. So that's the first mass murder plan. We decapitate the Soviet state, and in that context, the Jewish men were killed. That is the context here. The second one was the hugest mass murder plan we find in all of history. That is to starve 30 million of the Soviet people, mostly great Russians. Yeah? 30 million. And why? Otherwise, we Germans can't control the feeding of the European hinterland. Yeah? Experiences of the Nazis was, we have to avoid another 1918. The Nazi project is one to undo 1918, meaning the defeat in World War I, and to make Germany great again. They saw Germany as going down, yeah, and say, we're going to reverse that. We're going to make Germany great again. And why did we come in that situation? Because 1918, the left and the Jews have betrayed us. And they could betray us only because the hinterland, the home front, was already unstable. You have women in the streets begging for bread to feed their families. And that the smart Jews went into that and used that for revolution. That was the view, the experience, the view of what to do. And now, we're going to undo that with another war. to make Germany great again, so it can exist among the big powers of the planet, and we must not let that happen again. Never again 1918, meaning we need to start very quickly. That the plan was we must do that till the end of 1941. We must do that. Yeah? Heydrich and Bakker, those are the main functionaries, they said that. We must do, otherwise we won't be able to conduct this war. We have no chance of winning this. That was a plan. Yeah? Sort of accepted by the complete leadership, and then the war starts, and it doesn't go according to plan. Yeah? In the end of July, it was middle of July, end of July, it was clear we have a problem here, a huge problem. Yeah? They wanted to be in July, they wanted to be in Leningrad. Yeah? In August, they wanted to be in Kiev, and in September to be in Moscow. Now, the longest sort of plan was within 10 weeks. The whole thing is over, and then we can deal with the UK and with the USA, with the United States. With the Anglo-American enemy, because we're done in the East. And there was no plan B to this. Now, it didn't go according to plan, so what do? You had the plans of killing communists and Jews, Jewish men, and you had the plan of starving people. But both of it didn't really work. Now, but the problem which generated this plan continued to exist. And the Nazis were so successful because they learned so much from their own mistakes. It's a bit counterintuitive because we think of them as stubborn ideologues. Yeah? But that doesn't explain their success. They were very flexible. And at the end of July, we have the document for Lithuania on the 2nd of August. The Jews in all Lithuanian provinces have to go. Säubern. It needs to be cleansed. Yeah? And that's why we have the next step, complete murder in provinces. Yeah? In August, September, in the north, Šiauliai and Panevėžys, in the north of Lithuania, completely. And that is 50 to 60,000 Jews dead. Yeah? That is 2 months before Babyn Yar, a month before Kamenets-Podolsk. Yeah? So in those shtetls, this happened. So German decision, 2nd of August, that we have the first time in writing complete murder in provinces. In the cities, we need the Jews. At least in some regions, we Germans are smart, we make selections. We don't kill all of them, we kill only the useless ones, which are a burden or a danger. Yeah? And the rest we put in ghettos and go on from there. Yeah? And in ghettos only as long as we need them, because we're going to replace the Jewish workforce, there was a plan, by non-Jews, meaning Lithuanians or Ukrainians, or by Soviet prisoners of war, yeah? Or in 1943-44 by Soviet evacuees, by those people evacuated from the east. They should replace Jews, and that's why the Vilna ghetto could be destroyed. They're going to be replaced by Soviet evacuees, with no problem. Yeah? So that was a calculation, and we need to understand those calculations if we want to understand the decisions. Yeah? So instead of killing communists and Russians, starving Russians, the main victim groups were Soviet prisoners of war. We have 2 million dead till spring 42, and 1 million Jews dead till the end of 41. 3 million dead. Jews and prisoners of war instead of the plan. So why? What happened here? Yeah. So this is now another sort of a serious historical question. What is this change based on the evidence we have? Yeah. So, okay. We all know in Lithuania we have then 40,000 left in ghettos, Vilnius, Kaunas, and Šiauliai, Švenčionis. And then very soon we have within the next year or maybe about 50 labor camps around the country, again filled with Jews, yeah, because it was local needs. Yeah? So it's, they couldn't replace Jews. They were just, instead of getting less, they needed more. Yeah? And that was sort of the development that people like Gens built on. The Germans need the labor, and if we are not causing a security risk for them, then we buy time. We buy time. Now, Shoah in Ukraine, I make it very short, it was very similar, even though the timeline is a bit different. At the beginning, it's the same. You have pogroms, you have more pogroms, it's much larger. More pogroms in Western Ukraine, Eastern Poland, and you have the same murder of Jewish men. Same thing. And you have and I was surprised by that. I didn't expect that, but that's the truth. Beginning of August, same time as in Lithuania, we have the beginning of the murder of whole communities. But not everywhere. Not everywhere. So when you look at the map as a whole, you have the complete murder of communities in Lithuania and and the provinces of Latvia, and you have it in eastern Belarus, and you have it in eastern Ukraine. And in the rest, for example, in eastern Galicia, in West Ukraine, you have, at the end of 41, you have 80% of the Jews still living. Over 400,000 Jews alive. 80,000 murdered, over 400,000 still alive, without not without any problems, but still alive. So how do we explain that? Another one of those historical questions we need to learn. So Eastern Ukraine, complete. Eastern Belarus, complete. Yeah? And the rest of Ukrainian Jews, so this means already for killing of Jewish men and the Eastern communities, 500,000 Jews dead in Ukraine alone. But 1 million still alive. Yeah? So, and then we have several waves, beginning in May 42, several waves of murdering those Jewish communities in Ukraine till the end. Yeah? So that's so it's, you don't have this huge wave everywhere like in Lithuania at the beginning in 41, and then stability till end of 42 or beginning of 43. You have selected killings in 41, then huge murder waves in 42, and then more stability again in 43. So it's a different timeline somehow, but the result is the same. It doesn't make a difference. And that is analytically, for us, the decisive key. We need to explain. So, my thinking about trying to analyze the Jewish situation is this, I said already, it's a trap. So what constitutes this trap? Why couldn't those 2.5 million Jews get away? There was no time and there was nowhere to go to. And why was there nowhere to go to? And that is because they confronted not only the Germans, but everywhere. And that is true almost for most part of Europe. Everywhere they confronted the Germans and the non-Germans, non-Jews. Everywhere. Yeah? So even in this huge territory of Ukraine, you have only small pockets where small groups could survive. Everywhere. And so in Lithuania, I mean, the example I take is it's one of the most gruesome ones. It's the Kinderaktionen. The Kinderaktionen, when Vilna ghetto was destroyed already, and you have in late 43 and spring 44, you have the effort of the surviving Jewish communities in the ghettos, and then turned already into concentration camps and labor camps, to hide the children, to buy them some more time. And it was so difficult to find non-Jewish families who would take them. They did find a couple of hundred survived in this way. Sergei is sitting here, he's one of them. But it was so difficult, and most of them died. Most of them died. Why is that? Because there was no power with the Jewish groups to influence that. They depended completely on the decision of the non-Jewish, non-Germans. Yes, we're going to help. We're going to organize this. In France, we find whole valleys with Jewish villages, which were hidden from the German. Whole valleys, thousands of people. Impossible in the East. Yeah, impossible. It's not that the French were better. Yeah, but it's the structures were so different, and the survival rate in France was much higher. Was 75% in France. 25% of Jews in France were murdered. 75 did survive. Yeah. So the answer to the question why were the Jews so trapped is because of the Lithuanian, German, Ukrainian coalition. There was like no way out. This constitutes the trap. And for analysis of the behavior of the choices that the non-Germans non-Jews made, is of course this is the key. This is the key. Yeah. Why did they decide to do that? Because when you look into the archive, you find protests for everything, for economy, for culture, for education, for infrastructure, for politics, for army. Please, Germans, let us do this, let us do this, let us do this. And you don't find anything except one half sentence. What, for God's sake, are you doing with the Jews? Yeah? Because it's also clear that behind the killing were not the Lithuanians or the Ukrainians, were the Germans. It came from outside. Yeah? And then building on the executive help of non-Germans, yes, to a large extent. Yeah? But the initiative was always with the Germans. And there was one case, and I'm sure I told you that last time too, one case in Alitus, where the Lithuanian, Alitus, now, where the Lithuanian police chiefs asked the Germans, please, now, I have 800 Lithuanian partisans here, let me finish the Jews in the county. Now, we have the document written to the Germans. Now, and then we don't have the answer, but we know what happened. Nothing happened. And then 4 weeks later and 8 weeks later, Hamann came from Kaunas with Lithuanian policemen and shot the Jews in the county. Yeah? So they declined that offer because it was too much out of control. Yeah? They would only let the non-Germans go when they were more or less sure this will stay, we can control it. Now we are here, so you do the shooting over there, we stay here, and if we see it's okay, it's okay. But if we are, is it in danger that this is not going to be okay, it's going to be a chaos, yeah, we're going to stop you. Yeah. So, what's the time? I need to come to an end, right? Yes. Last thought. It took me years and years and years to get into the analytical grip of the Jewish situation here. And the best term we have, I believe, is from Lawrence Langer. And Lawrence Langer has coined this choiceless choices term. Yeah? Choiceless choices, which means the Jews were from between 41 and 44 in this region in a completely paradoxical situation. Now, as emphasized, no way out, no matter what you do, meaning for the big picture, there is no choice. There wasn't one choice you could do. Any choice you would make would lead to death or being murdered. Any choice. Now, that is so the principle of this. Gens knew, and the leadership of the partisans as well, of the Jew partisans in the Vilna ghetto, there were 5 million dead already in 1944. In late 43, 5 million Jews dead. We have documents from that. They know. So how do we buy time? Meaning they had to make the little choices all the time. You have the choices. Choices doesn't mean you cannot make a choice. It means you have to make choices in a situation of impossible choices only. Each choice you make has the price is too high. You have to pay. Yeah. Just think of Abba Kovner. When he was going in September 43 to the partisans, that he had to leave his mother behind. Now this stands for me as like, this is something unthinkable. You leave your mother behind and you're going. Yeah. So what is this? So the choice is always one where the price is too high. And this means, if we understand that, the impossibility of this situation, our value system, our morals, our ethic considerations, they are not valid here. This is a different world. Yeah, what Sergei said, when he was born with 3 months he was living a few weeks in the Vilna ghetto, even though his existence was excluded by the Germans. What is this? Yeah, you cannot come with normal moral considerations. Yeah, this is a different planet. Yeah, meaning we have to abandon our moral high point completely. We have to turn from judges in any way to people who try to understand. And if we do that, turn from judges, which we all, the historiography for the Shoah is deeply engraved by this judgmental grip. For the perpetrators, the collaboration, the Jews, it's everywhere. You try to identify bad people and good people. Yeah? But the categories, that's what I'm trying to say, of good and bad don't even apply. They don't even apply in a medium and higher level. Of course they apply on a personal level. All the stories you know, and I know some of them, yeah? Of course it makes a huge difference if somebody is good or bad. But for the bigger picture, it doesn't make a difference. Yeah? So if we look at this, the question we have to ask is more simple: what happened and why? Why did the people make the choices they did? And it's different for the Lithuanians, it's different for the Germans. I'm talking only about the Jews, because they are the only group who was permanently a victim in this time. Soviet prisoners of war were for a part of time victim, yes. But this was changed after half a year. Spring 42 situation for them is different. Soviet evacuees, there were 40,000 dead in Alytus in that time, in 43, 44. Also, part of them, it's a nightmare what happened to them. There was nothing they could do, nothing. Yeah? But the Jews were permanently in that for the whole stretch. And that's a categorically different issue. Yeah? So I'm pleading to leave the high point, we are not judges, yeah? But we're historians and just try to understand, and that's it. Yeah? And we do that as good as possible. Yeah? And this is very difficult because we all love to sort. Good and bad, good and bad, good and bad. And we all love the hero stories, and we all love those fairy tales. Yeah? And I don't want to take that away, but that's not for me. Yeah? So I'm pleading to think about Lawrence Langer's choices as one analytical, and for me the best, analytical sort of conceptual grip on this story. And I hope we have some time left and some energy left for discussion, questions, communication. Yeah, thank you for listening so patiently.
Hi, I have a question, and the question is regarding the chart that you showed. And you said 95% of the Jews in that whole area were killed. But if you take a look at Moldova actually has a 20% survival rate.
Romanians.
Pardon?
Romanians. Occupied Romanian.
Okay,
and Romania changed side in the summer 42.
But, okay, but what was the mental difference? What mentality difference was there with the Jews?
It's they changed their mind. It's just as the Hungarians. They were in coalition with the Germans, attacking together with the Germans, the Soviet Union, and they were saying, okay, this is not going as we wanted it. And even though they were ardent fascists, I mean, the craziness of the Romanian fascists is a high point of any fascist I've ever seen. It's like the Hamas. It's a death cult without words even. Yeah? But they understood, if we continue with this, our state is going to be destroyed, and we have to change sides. And they stopped the anti-Semitic policy. There were all those people in Moldavia, in Transnistria. You have all the story. There were 50 ghettos there. And scandalous decisions, conditions, yeah? But they didn't kill them. And that's why we have this survival rate there. Yeah? That's not in the Germans, in the German sphere of influence and Romanian sphere of influence. That's the reason.
Thank you.
May I have to make two remarks. The first one is the one country where the local people were not so much actively participating in killing Jews was Belarus. And why we know that? Because Germans asked the local policemen from Latvia and from Lithuania to come to Belarus to fasten the power of the Jews killing. Yes. Otherwise they wouldn't expect their plan. This is one. The other point is that in spite or beside the killing of Jews, we know of the righteous of nations, праведники народов мира, righteous of nations, and the number, and you know, in Yad Vashem, there is a special department of righteous of nations, and the criteria are very harsh, very strong there. Not everyone, the people to be recognized as a righteous of nation had to risk his life or the life of his family. So I have the figures here. In Lithuania, 24 local people, most of them Lithuanians, are recognized as righteous of nations. In Ukraine, 2013, 2713 are recognized by this day as righteous of nations. One explanation could be that in Ukraine, including the western Ukraine, were much more Jews. And therefore, but still, we have to remember the numbers, that in Lithuania and in Ukraine were local people who were saving Jews and risking their own life. So I have to add honest disclosure. I'm a member of the Commission of the Righteous of Nations in Yad Vashem. Therefore, I know firsthand this situation, and I know that in many cases, people who were saved by Righteous of Nations were then disclosed to Germans by local people. They came and said, "You are hiding a Jew, we will kill you, and you will kill your Jews as well." So this is my two additions. Thank you.
Excellent remarks. Thank you. Belarus is another different case with the same result. With the same result. That's the point. It doesn't make a difference whether you're hesitating to collaborate or not, or whether your cooperation with the occupier is in a different way. It doesn't make a difference for the fate of the Jews. Now, the mixing up of sending those auxiliary units, those police units who weren't supposed to be called to police units, this was a declared policy by the Germans. Now, when you read about the destruction of the Vilna ghetto, you don't have Lithuanian policemen there. You have Estonians and Ukrainians. Yeah, no, and you have of the 25 Lithuanian police battalions, you have 14 outside of the country. 14 outside. You have Ukrainians everywhere. No, you have Estonians everywhere. You have Latvians everywhere. Yeah. So this is mix it up. Divided emperor, divide and rule. That is very important for this. So it's not something specific for Belarus. Now this happened everywhere. Now you have Lithuanian units in Latvia. You have Latvian units in Lithuania. Now, so this is really like we have to be careful with those armed units because they might be the nucleus of resistance against us. Yeah. So this was, and then the numbers of you're very right with the numbers, of course, but you said 900 here, 2,000 there. Now the size of Ukraine, it's P10. So the appropriate number would be, if you do it mathematically, would be you need 9,000 Ukrainians if you want to compare to 900 Lithuanians. But the point is, this is so much abused by the national competition. Are we good or are we bad? The Poles always say we have the highest number of righteous among the nation. But please, what does it say? Yeah, what is the context of claiming this? Let us just look without all the ideologies at all those incredible stories of saving Jews. Yeah? For Berlin, I didn't really look into the save. You know much more about that than I do. I just know a little bit for Berlin. It took always 20 Germans to rescue one Jew over a longer period of time. Exactly. No? So to get all that organized, you need about 20. And you have about 4,000, the Germans called them U-boats, U-Boote. Now that they were in the half underground of the German city. You need tens of thousands of people to survive that, to organize that those few could survive. So so what I would like to do is take those numbers out of this national competition and just look at their stories. Now, because, for example, the museum in Vilna, we have our own count, they say. We have different categories than Yad Vashem, and we come to the number of 3,000. Yeah, and when you start looking into that, you say, "Come on, are you kidding me?" No? So if there's one friendly remark somewhere, immediately they turn him into a savior of Jews. So it's the overall picture is the rescuers were the trap was constituted because there were not more rescuers. That's the point. Ariel.
I say that the numbers of writers among the nations are correct, but they should be viewed differently, because in Ukraine there were 35 million people, and in Lithuania 3 million people. So if you look proportionally, you will see that Lithuania has the highest number proportionally per 1 million people. Lithuania has the highest number of writers among the nations. Two times more than in Poland, 5 times more than Ukraine. That's my correction.
Yeah.
Can you please tell me about the big population of the Volksdeutsche in Ukraine during the war, about their behavior during the war?
So I haven't learned enough about them by now. I know about the Lithuanian ethnic Germans, yeah, and I know from colleagues who were working on the south of Ukraine and on those territories close to the Romanian border. There, the ethnic Germans were amongst the most awful people you can imagine. But among them in Poland also. Now, they were shooting units were built out of these groups. Yeah, so they were the most gruesome thing you can imagine. But these are just impressions. I don't really know. I'm sorry. I will. There is some. I know there is, but I just don't. I'm not firm in it. I don't. I haven't looked at it. There is research. I know that. Yeah. And there are also a lot of German documents on that, because the German Reich was, of course, looking for every piece of Germanness they could find anywhere, yeah, to strengthen their own case. Yeah. And for Lithuania, it's a bit special because you have 50,000 ethnic Germans about in that area, which were taken out of Soviet Lithuania in 1940 and then put in camps in West Poland, with the expectations Poles and Jews are going to be removed from Western Poland to the east, and then the settlers can go into empty spaces, so to speak, in the cities and in the farms in West Poland, in those annexed territories, Warthegau, Danzig-Westpreußen, in those areas. And this didn't go. This didn't work because they couldn't deport the people. They didn't know where to. It was too many, could just cause too many problems. So the deportation numbers from there to the east were high, but by far not high enough to deal with the ethnic Germans waiting in the camps. So you have over 200,000 ethnic Germans waiting in camps somewhere in Western Poland. Litzmannstadt, for example, Lwów. What is it? Lwów or Lwów? Lwów. No, Litzmannstadt. It's not Lemberg, it's the other one.
In Ukrainian, Lwów in Russian, Lemberg in Yiddish.
Yeah, we're not talking Lemberg, we're talking about Litzmannstadt. We're talking about Western Poland. Yeah. Then they were getting nervous, those Germans, because they were sitting for months and months and months and months in those camps, and they were complaining. And then the Lithuanian Germans in the administration in Lithuania said, let's select them and take the best of them. We make a selection with the Germans and take those 30,000 who are Osteinsatzfähig, who are strong enough to be occupied in the east. We take them and put them back into the farms in Lithuania. And where do we put them? We move Lithuanians to replace Poles that we move out of the Vilnius area. Because it was so important to keep Lithuanian cooperation with the Germans. Yeah? So this worry of we might lose the readiness to cooperate with us was always there. And for all of them, for the Poles, for the Ukrainians, for Lithuanians. So the Germans were worrying about. It's counterintuitive, because we see them as the Herrenmenschen. Yeah? They depended on the cooperation. They depended on that. That's the source of the power. Now, that little power that was there for the non-Germans. So, what happened? They moved the Poles out of the Vilnius region, moved Lithuanians into the Vilnius region to Lithuanianize the region, and moved then Germans into Lithuanian farms. Now, that was the idea. When you look at the practice, it's ridiculous. No? But you have almost 20,000 Lithuanian ethnic Lithuanian Germans back in the country. Yeah? So this is a kind of a special case of ethnic Germans then. No? Something similar happened in the headquarter in Hegewald in Ukraine, where there was supposed to be Hitler's headquarter and Himmler's headquarter in some forests. Yeah, and they did the same. They wanted to surround those headquarters with ethnic Germans. Yeah, so there was a little settlement there. But all the rest of the decisions, so always when you read, well, the Nazis wanted Lebensraum im Osten. They wanted settlement, and because for settlement they needed space, so they got away with the locals. Now, that existed only on paper, and all the decisions taken, actually, why did the group make those choices, was not based on settlement plans for in 20 years, but on war necessities. Now, we need to win the war now. If we lose this one, we have a problem. We need stability in the hinterland, we need resources, we need manpower. Yeah? And the Germans were always calculating, not only between annihilation and labor, no, but between annihilation, food, labor, diseases, apartments. Yeah? Those 5 categories were always in the decision making. Now what's going to happen now with which group? And of course, anti-Semitism is everywhere. It's everywhere. It's not in a separate category. Now, many people say, historians, okay, this one was anti-Semitic and this one was pragmatic. That is nonsense. That is nonsense, because most of them were anti-Semitic pragmatists or pragmatic anti-Semites. Yeah? And there were a few exceptions. Like for Villner, you all know the story of Anton Schmidt. That's something else. Or of Hermann Plagge. That's something else. But those, again, were the few righteous we have there, like 2 out of many hundreds. Yeah? So I have to kind of really answer the question of the ethnic situation.
Move Chechens and bring Crimean Tatars instead, and he also played with the Germans from Ukraine, moving them as well.
Yeah.
So we have a situation of 2 dictators.
We have that everywhere in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. The first huge exchange was in the Treaty of Lausanne between Turks and Greeks. Yeah, when you have independent Turkey and you have all the Greek people living in Turkey and all the Turkish people living in Greece. No, there was Treaty of Lausanne, 1923. Yeah, so this and just think of 45 of Potsdam, Conference of Potsdam, and the exchange of populations there. Lithuania was cleansed of Poles. Yeah, they were put into West Poland, into the area which was evacuated by the Germans. Where are all the Vilnius Poles? Huh? They were resettled. Yeah, this was kind of something we would never think of today, and rightly so. But that was the game at the time. Not the game, the rules of the game at the time. Yeah? And you have this huge movement of like both my mother and my father, they came with this huge evacuation. Like there were 12 million Germans coming out of eastern and southeastern Germany at the end of the war. 12 million into West Germany. And it was not East Germany, it was West Germany. And you have to put this 12 million people somewhere. Yeah? So that's my family story, so to speak. Now, from East Prussia and East Germany. Yeah? So this movement of populations is very important to consider. But then again, to consider not as a plan, but what's actually happening. And the differences are huge. So you have all of the literature, you find always the Generalplan Ost, General Plan East. Now, like millions of people moving here and there and there. Nothing of that happened. Nothing. And the decisions taken for mass murdering certain populations and people was based in on a different context. Yeah? When the Germans needed to, not only its wishful thinking, but they needed to consider it as necessary. In German it's notwendig. Yeah? When you hear the word notwendig, necessary, it gets dangerous. Because then there's no moral barrier. Now, for the sake of the German people, for the sake of your own people, you do anything. Yeah? because you are so courageous. Yeah? And the moral value changes completely because it's just particulars and only what's good for your own people, and you don't care anymore what's good for anybody else. And this is important to understand this SS mentality and the Wehrmacht mentality. That's their value system. I can't hear you. I'm not sure. Well, לא בטוח שאני מסכים. כן. כן, 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 כן. כן. בסדר. זהו, אנחנו עייפים, נכון?